So, I've been a fan of One Piece for a really long time now, but there's one side of the media that I've never really seen before, and it's the One Piece movies. I really want to watch all the movies from the anime that I've watched so far, so that's exactly what I'm gonna do in a little series that I'll post in between some other videos moving forward. The first movie that we're gonna cover in the series is One Piece the movie. One Piece the movie came out in 2000 and was animated by the same company that does the anime, Toei Animation. Toei's actually animated every One Piece movie, I think, and that was really surprising, especially considering how some of them look. This movie came out before the end of the Baratie A arc, and doesn't even feature our resident simp, Sanji. It only has Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, and Nami in it, and it's actually kinda weird to see the crew be so small after all this time. I'm writing this part of the script before I watch the movie, but I've actually watched this movie once before. I don't really remember much from it, but I don't remember liking it very much. Hopefully it's a little bit better than I remember it being, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up, I never do. The movie is only 50 minutes long and is apparently about this great gold pirate named Wunan, but I'll have to watch it myself to see what exactly it's about. With that being said, let me go watch the movie now. I'll talk more about it after I'm done. Actually, one final thing, there are One Piece movies that were written by Oda himself, and this is not one of them, so I really don't know what to expect. Okay, I'm actually gonna go watch it now. So, that shit was kinda whack, but kinda cool at the same time. I finished watching the movie about 2 hours ago and was gonna start writing the script right away, but got distracted and played Super Mario 3D World for 2 hours instead. If I'm being honest, this movie wasn't bad, but it also wasn't very good. There are some moments where it is really good, like the ending stuff with the kid's grandpa and Wunan, but it's also got some bad stuff like the animation in some places and the bad guys being complete idiots. Those are my thoughts on the movie. It wasn't good, but it wasn't bad either. I feel like I wouldn't do the story justice if I didn't talk about it a little bit though, so let's go over the movie's events while cutting out most of the filler. So, the movie opens up with this monologue from the narrator talking about this legendary gold pirate named Wunan, who apparently stole a third of the world's gold while only stealing it from bad people. It then cuts to a random pirate ship whose crew is in the middle of being slaughtered by this lion head-ass man named El Dorado. He steals a map and kidnaps a little kid, and then we get to see the Straw Hats for the first time. As I said in the beginning, this movie takes place before the Baratie A arc, so Sanji isn't a part of the crew yet. Because of this, the Straw Hats are in the middle of the ocean, starving with no food to their names. That's until 3 random henchmen pull up and steal Nami's treasure, giving the boys some food for their troubles. They end up pissing Luffy off and he beats them up. That's when this man El Dorado pulls up, turns Super Saiyan, and screams like Gotenks in the hyperbolic time chamber. This splits our crew up, and the first 2 we get to see are Luffy and Zoro as they drift around on a boat with the little boy that El Dorado kidnapped. It turns out that this kid's name is Tobio, and we find out that he ran away from his grandpa Gonzo after Luffy and Zoro smell udon from a mile away and row to his stand. This is where we get some more exposition, like the fact that Tobio hates the fact that his grandpa is wasting his life selling udon, and that Tobio wants to find Wunan so he can ask if he can join Wunan's crew. The boys are all bonding until you realize that the old man is running a business, and the Straw Hats are completely broke at this point in the story. Luffy tries to give the old man a rock and run away, but that doesn't work, and his grandpa somehow ties both Luffy and Zoro up with an anchor. This is when all the convenient shit happens at once. El Dorado and his crew of no-names find Wunan's island, Nami has somehow stowed away on El Drago's ship, Usopp has somehow found the island and is hiding in a barrel, and Luffy, Zoro, Tobio, and Gonzo all washed up on the same island. Not quite sure how 2 groups of people that didn't have the special treasure map found the special treasure island, but they did, and the whole crew is here. Except they're separated. Usopp gets taken hostage by El Dorado's crew after lying and saying that he knows where the treasure is, Nami is trailing them, and Luffy and Zoro and Tobio all get lost after Tobio has a falling out with his grandpa and accidentally takes Luffy's precious hat. We then get some random stuff like Luffy giving Tobio a motivational speech, El Dorado's right-hand man named Golas just cutting a landslide in half, and Usopp and Nami meeting back up after El Dorado and his crew find this temple that apparently has the gold. That final scene is my favorite. Watching Usopp and Nami just ad-lib this lie about Wunan's gold is hilarious and definitely a highlight of the movie. This lie that Nami and Usopp make up is that Wunan's gold is buried beneath this temple, and El Dorado starts using his devil fruit to blow the temple away. This is like a Luffy signal though, and him and El Dorado have the best first interaction. Tobio tries to defend Wunan's gold gold by himself, only to get saved by Zoro, who cut some of El Dorago's gold fingernails off. They have a short scuffle before they fly away because Luffy's foot gets stuck on a rock. This is where the gang finally gets back together, and we get this amazing frame of animation. Nami burns the treasure map that she stole from El Dorago, but the gang finds a new clue anyway and starts scaling a giant mountain. This is when we get this breathtaking frame of animation. I keep saying frame for these, but it's not frames, it's like at least 5 seconds where the animation looks like this. I'm honestly not even hating on it, I just think it's hilarious. Anyway, the gang finds a place to rest during their mountain climb and finds Gonzo just chilling there with a pot of udon. This is where Gonzo explains that him and Wunan were friends back in the day before Wunan was a pirate, and our movie flashback begins. In this flashback, we see that Wunan hates his dad, but Gonzo loves Wunan's dad because he taught him how to make udon. We also find out that Wunan wanted all of the gold because his dad worked his entire life for a tiny piece of gold, so Wunan basically doesn't want to be poor anymore. Some random shit happens, Gonzo and Wunan get in a fight on a cliff after Gonzo refuses to join Wunan's pirate crew. They almost fall off of the cliff, but Wunan's makeshift pirate flag saves them, and Gonzo basically kills himself after realizing that Wunan's pirate flag was about to rip. The moral of the story is Gonzo wants to see Wunan again because he thinks he's a changed person and would eat his udon. After our short story, the gang finishes their climb and finds Wunan's house, only for this man Golos to destroy it with one swing of his sword. Or it was El Dorago using his devil fruit, I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, El Dorago found them, so a fight ensues. El Dorago also spills all of Gonzo's udon on the ground and stomps on it, so us true One Piece fans knew that this fight was over before it even began. And that's exactly what happens. Luffy eats all of the udon off of the ground and is about to punch El Dorago when Golos steps in. Zoro ends up stepping in to fight Golos, and the fight ends pretty quickly after Zoro realizes that Golos doesn't have any pride in his swordplay. El Dorago and Luffy then have their little fight, and this one is actually pretty cool. We even get to see the move that Luffy used to defeat Don Krieg before he officially used it in the anime. El Dorago's Scream fruit was also really interesting and provided some interesting animation. The fight ends with a Gum Gum bazooka, and Wunan's crewmates that didn't even get names all killed themselves after running off the peak of the mountain. Kinda dark, but we now finally get to see all of this gold that Wunan stole. Or not, it turns out that Wunan has actually been dead this whole time after realizing that his true treasure wasn't the gold, it was the adventure that got him all the gold. So he returned all of the gold that he stole to its rightful owners and starved to death inside of a mountain. While I'm making a joke out of it, it was actually kinda sweet with Wunan remembering Gonzo with the words inside of his gold room and telling Gonzo that he always felt that Gonzo was with him, making him content and willing to accept his death. It turns out that Wunan's real treasure was the torn pirate flag from all those years ago. The movie ends with Tobio apologizing to his grandpa for being a dick the whole time, and the crew saying goodbye to their new friends. They said that they want to meet them again, but we know damn well that that's not gonna happen, so it looks like that's the last time that we're ever gonna see Tobio and his grandpa Gonzo. One Piece the movie was something that I thought I wouldn't like. I remember watching it before and not really liking it. This time around, while the movie didn't blow me away, it wasn't something that I really disliked either. The emotional payoff scenes at the end of the movie were actually pretty touching, and I enjoyed them. Overall, while this movie isn't anything earth-shattering, it is a decent movie starring our favorite pirate crew, so if you're a fan of One Piece, I really recommend that you try to see it at least once, even if you do have to go somewhere that you normally wouldn't to see it. So, last week I started covering the One Piece movies for my anime movies series, and this week we're gonna continue it. Last week I covered a movie that was better than I thought it would be in One Piece the movie, and this week I'm covering another movie that I've already seen before. This movie is called Clockwork Island Adventure, and just like One Piece the movie, I don't remember much about it, but I don't remember liking it very much. This movie came out in 2001 and was once again animated by Toei Animation. While I didn't remember what One Piece the movie was about, I actually do remember what this movie is about. In the beginning of the movie, the Going Merry gets stolen by somebody, and the Straw Hats are attacked by this weird pirate crew. That crew kidnaps Nami, and the Straw Hats meet two random brothers who tell them where to go in order to get the Mary and Nami back. Hopefully this movie is also better than I remember it being, but I'm once again not gonna get my hopes up. This is another one of those movies that Oda didn't write, so I once again don't know what to expect. Not quite sure how I'm gonna cover the movie after I watch it, if I'm gonna recap it like I did with last week's movie, or what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna have to come up with an idea as I watch it. With that being said, let me go watch the movie now. I'll see you guys when I'm done. I'm done now. This movie was kinda like the first one. It was better than I remember it being, but it really wasn't anything special. Instead of doing a recap like I did last week, I think I'm gonna give the most basic plot breakdown ever and then talk about some of the weird shit that goes down in this thing. And trust me, there's a lot of weird shit that happens in this movie. I was right about my basic plot breakdown from before I watched the movie. It opens with the Straw Hats on a random island with Luffy winding up a random windmill toy, Sanji, oh yeah, Sanji's in this movie, rubbing lotion on Nami's back, Zoro doing push-ups with what looks like sandbags on his back, and Usopp messing around with an inflatable party tube. Luffy notices the Mary getting stolen, and we cut to a week later. This is when the crew gets tricked by these two thief brothers named Akisu and Barodo. The older brother tells the crew who stole their ship, and right on cue, that pirate crew attacks. This crew blows up the ship that the Straw Hats and their new allies are on, and then they kidnap Nami. The rest of the movie has the rest of the Straw Hats and the thief brothers invading the Trump pirates' base in order to get Nami and the Mary back. There are some plot twists, like Clockwork Island being Akisu's home, and Akisu's parents being the people that made the famous diamond clock that the brothers are trying to steal. Barodo was also the one that stole the Mary, not the Trump pirates, and he also didn't really want to steal the diamond clock. He wanted the Straw Hats to take down the Trump pirates so Akisu could live with his true parents. Well, that ends up happening at the end of the movie, but Akisu decides to continue living with his adopted brother, Barodo. Okay, let's talk about the weird shit now. The first thing isn't that weird, but the people are kinda glossy in this movie, like someone lathered them in donut glaze. It was kinda weird in the beginning, but I got used to it as the movie went on. Now let's talk about what we see after we cut to a week later. These guys are on a swan paddle boat. That was already weird, but Nami and Sanji are dressed like they're about to get married, Zoro looks like the best man, and Usopp is dressed up like a priest. They say that the only place open on the island that they were on was a rental store for wedding ceremonies, but why didn't Luffy change clothes? This man must be smelling terrible at this point. Also, why does a wedding ceremony rental store have a swan paddle boat? Are people getting married on that thing? The next weird bit is during the first attack by the Trump pirates. First of all, we've got this naked lady just chilling in a hot tub. Like, okay, I'm all for naked ladies in hot tubs, but why? You're in the middle of the ocean. The animators must have been down bad when they animated her too. Her ass cheeks are just sticking out. They then have the battle where the Straw Hats beat up all the goons, but this man turns into a spiky Sonic the Hedgehog and significantly damages their ship. Usopp tries to run away, but they end up catching up, blowing up their ship, and kidnapping Nami. The naked lady then implies that their captain King Bear is going to force Nami to love him. Yeah, it was kind of unsettling, but they also play it off as a joke with everybody repeating what the naked lady said, and Spiky Sonic blowing up the rest of their ship with dynamite. Also, how is Spiky Sonic just swimming in the water when he clearly has a devil fruit? I thought the devil fruits meant no swimming. This isn't weird, but another thing I want to mention is the movie paralleling Akiso and Barodo's relationship with Shanks and little kid Luffy. While the comparison kinda makes sense, I feel like they kinda forced it on the viewer instead of letting them figure it out for themselves. The first time they show the comparison on screen, it totally makes sense to put it there, but in future moments they keep showing the clip like the viewer can't figure it out themselves. Okay, let's get back to the weird stuff. After the remaining Straw Hats decide where to go, we cut to the enemy hideout at the top of Clockwork Island, and it's a scene that's chocked full of weird stuff. First, we see our main man, King Bear, looking like a bear and a total snack. He's talking to these two random scientists about this cannon that they've been making. Apparently, they've been working on this cannon for 7 years, and King Bear thinks that it's strong enough for him to become the king of the pirates because of it. Knowing what we know now, and based on the showing that this cannon has in this movie, this is laughable. This cannon would have a hard time taking down Bellamy, let alone someone like Kaido, Big Mom, or Shanks. Anyway, he sends them away with a gunshot after showing them that he has complete control over them because he could basically destroy Clockwork Island at any time. The island works like this. It's a giant floating island on top of this giant staircase on another island that's basically held up by one support beam. This support beam is called the Key of the Island and is in the throne room of Trump Castle. Can Can we also talk about how these people are clearly named after playing cards, but given our current political climate in the United States, it's retroactively hilarious. After we see the talk about the weapon, his crew gets back to the hideout, and this man goes from intimidating to a bumbling mess as soon as he sees Nami. It's so jarring that it's funny. We also meet Mr. Jester of Cards, who tries to use certain phrases, but always messes up one word in them. And the Stink Scientist, who has some of the strangest interactions in the entire movie, hands down. Luffy and the crew then make this trek up the giant spiral staircase filled with traps, and Sanji basically breaks both of his feet while kicking away some boulders. This movie has this weird thing where Sanji can't seem to kick things as hard as he wants to if he doesn't have shoes on. This doesn't really make sense to me because this movie came out after Arlong Park, and this man Sanji beat Karate Fish's ass while he was barefoot after being underwater for like 3 straight minutes. This problem is amplified after a scene where Nami is playing cards with the Trump Pirates and absolutely whooping their asses. They then talk about how the rest of the Straw Hats haven't shown up yet, and as soon as Nami makes a joke about the Liquid Lady paying whip with her body, she becomes Naked Lady again and just slips out the drain. Spiky Sonic also makes his way out, so as an audience, we know that a fight scene is about to ensue. The Straw Hats and the Thief Brothers are just chilling in a hot air balloon when they hear the Naked Lady's voice loud and clear. She then comes out of a nearby faucet, and Spiky Sonic decides to attack out of nowhere. Sanji goes to kick the ball that Spiky Sonic sends their way, only for that ball to grow spikes and go right into Sanji's foot. This isn't exactly on topic, but after talking about this ball going through Sanji's foot, I just have to say this. There is a lot of blood in this movie. While the One Piece anime does feature blood every once in a while, even the random grunts in this movie bleed when they're hit, and you barely see this in the anime. It's not bad by any means, I just wanted to point this out because it's different from what I was used to. Sanji then falls to the ground and blows up because I forgot to mention that they were in this hot air balloon because the field that they were going over was covered in landmines. The Trump Pirates then capture Sanji, and after Sanji brags about rubbing lotion all over Nami's body, the Bear King has him crucified. Yes, I said crucified for daring to touch his forced fiancé in such a way. We then get this strange interaction where Usopp tries to act like a tough guy in front of Akisu, even though he was the biggest coward ever at this point in the story, and Boruto is revealed to be a cyborg. Not really though, he's kinda got an arm that looks like an automail arm from Full Metal Alchemist. We then get a fight against Stink Scientist, who sprays a paralytic gas from his asshole. I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. Usopp literally distracts Stink Scientist by eating his ass. It's like a comic relief thing too. Usopp gets fat like Mario when he drinks the water in the Mario and Luigi series. Such a strange scene here. It's followed up by another one because after Nami sees Sanji and Usopp crucified, she goes to attack Stink Scientist only to get gently laid on the floor. Now you might say the Stink Scientist just didn't want to lay out a lady, but Bear King just casually tosses Nami around later in the movie. I'm thinking that Stink Scientist is at least a little similar to King Bear, so I don't really understand this scene. There's also the fact that Nami is still Bear King's fiancé in this scene, but I'm making this point for comedic effect. No reason to be so stingy about a One Piece movie. Anyway, we get past those scenes, Zoro gets taken out by paralyzing feathers and gets crucified himself, so all of the Straw Hats except for Luffy are crucified at this point. Luffy then casually lifts a 5-story building out of the ground after thinking that Akisu dies, blows up his crew with dynamite, only for them to survive without a scratch, and the final fight begins. This fight and movie actually parallels Arlong Park quite a bit. Think about it, we've got a plot where Nami is somewhere where she doesn't want to be, there are 2 random characters that we'll probably never see again, and the fights are very similar, except for the Luffy one. Both Sanji and Zoro fight opponents in situations that parallel the situations that they were in during Arlong Park. Sanji fights Spiky Sonic, who says something about Sanji not being able to protect anything, just like Karate Fish did. And he kicks Spiky Sonic's ass as soon as they're on a level playing field, just like he did with Karate Fish. Now let's talk about Zoro. Zoro fights his opponent while he's seriously injured, and while it looks like he might lose the fight at first, he ends up pulling out at the end after realizing that his goal is to beat the strongest swordsman in the world. Now the final fight that I want to talk about is our main event, Luffy versus Bear King. I don't really know if you can even call this a fight. Luffy basically gets his ass kicked the whole time until Bear King messes up and tries to use the King Cannon on him, and Luffy deflects it back at him. One of the weaker One Piece fights that I've seen, if I'm being honest. Okay, that's all I really want to talk about when it comes to the second One Piece movie. Just like the first one, I thought it was pretty average and didn't do anything to woo me at all. Next week, I'm gonna cover the third One Piece movie and the last one that I've seen before, Chopper's Kingdom on the Island of Strange Animals. I know for a fact that I'm not gonna think that that one's better than I remember it being, so definitely stay tuned for that video next Thursday. So, it's time for another video, so you know what that means, another video about a movie. This time, we're gonna continue our coverage of the One Piece movies with the third One Piece movie called Chopper's Kingdom on the Island of Strange Animals. My buddy Joe has a saying that if an anime has 5 or more words in the title, it has a way higher chance of being awful. And while I don't agree with Joe's anime opinions most of the time, I actually agree with this one for the most part. With that being said, and the fact that the movie we're covering today has like 8 words in the title, I think you guys can see where I'm going with this. This movie is pretty awful, and I'm gonna talk about what I don't like about it, but first, let's talk about the backstory of the movie itself. This movie was released in 2002 and was animated by our Lord and Saviors, Toei Animation. This movie came out right after the Drum Island arc, but doesn't feature Vivi and Karu for some reason. They probably wouldn't have made the movie any better, but it would have been cool to see them, I guess. As I've already said, this movie takes place right after Drum Island, and you can tell by the way that Chopper acts around the crew. He's very shy around them, and still doesn't quite understand his role. If you were to watch this movie directly after finishing the Drum Island arc, Chopper's character would actually fit in quite well. This movie was also another one of these movies that Oda didn't write, so there's another red flag. The Straw Hats are actually pretty okay, with my favorite moments coming from them. My major problems come from everything else, like the story, side characters, main villains, and even the setting. With that being said, with this movie, I'm not gonna recap it like I did with the first movie, unless I need to do some for my point to make sense, and I'm not gonna talk about the weird stuff like I did with the second movie. With this movie, I'm only gonna talk about the things that I didn't like about the movie. Before I do that, however, I should probably talk about the stuff that I do like. It's one thing, and it's some interaction between Sanji and Zoro. Well, it's not really an interaction, it's talk that they have with their side villains after they defeat them. Zoro fought a guy that could kick really hard, and Sanji fights a guy that uses a sword. Their names are Hot Dog and Snake respectively, and they're always bragging about their skill. Whether it's Hot Dog claiming that he's the strongest person in the world, or Snake claiming to be the most handsome man in the world. There's a point in both of their respective fights where both Zoro and Sanji look like they're gonna lose, but us fans know that this can't happen in a shonen story, however, so Sanji and Zoro both beat their bad guys and compliment each other as they do it. Sanji says that Snake's cuts are nothing like Zoro's, and Zoro says that Hot Dog's kicks are nowhere near as hard as Sanji's. It's just a cool thing to see Sanji and Zoro complimenting each other without the other knowing about it. I like to imagine that if any of the other Straw Hats heard them say that and then brought it up when they were all together, both Zoro and Sanji would try to deny what they said. So, now that I've talked about the one thing that I explicitly liked, let's talk about the stuff that I didn't like. This movie opens up with a good enough scene featuring the Straw Hats talking about this legendary treasure on an island called Crown Island. They're also teasing Chopper about being scared and the fact that he's gonna have to fight. The movie actually starts out pretty good until the Mary is just thrown upward by an underwater volcano, and we see a ring of volcanoes erupting all surrounding an island. The Straw Hats get into the movie's special island by accident. I don't really have a problem with contrived stuff in movies, but I feel like this opening is just a little too contrived. And the contrivances continue, because what I forgot to mention was the fact that when the Mary was launched into the sky, the crew lost Chopper. We then cut to the bad new characters that we follow whenever we're not with the Straw Hats. There are a ton of random animals that barely speak, and then there's 2 characters that actually know how to talk. One is a little boy named Mobambi, and a blackbird that walks on 2 feet named Raventi. I don't like Mobambi, but the bird is okay. That's probably because he barely talks, but at least he's bearable. Fun fact actually, Mobambi is voiced by the same voice actor that voices Momonosuke now. Anyway, they're talking about how the Animal King recently died, and a prophecy about how a new one gets crowned crowned when all the volcanoes erupt at once. That's when Chopper decides to fall out of the sky and gets a giant pointy rock shoved up his ass. Oh, and he's also crowned king because he made the prophecy come true or whatever. I don't really like this concept if I'm being honest. While I love Chopper, I don't really feel like he can carry scenes that aren't his backstory all by himself. Whenever this movie isn't with the rest of the Straw Hats is especially bad. Chopper and Mobambi's relationship is very rushed, and the scene of them crying together made me cringe. I also don't really understand why Mobambi wants Chopper to stay on the island with him so badly. I understand that he might be going a little crazy, seeing as he's only had 2 talking birds to interact with for a couple of years, but it's pretty clear that Chopper doesn't want to be here. Let him go back on his pirate ship with his friends. There's also a scene with Mobambi at the end that makes absolutely no sense to me, but I'll talk about that scene towards the end of the video. So, now that I've talked about the new good guys that I don't like, let's talk about the new villains that I don't like. I've already talked about the Great Hot Dog and Snake who fought Zoro and Sanji, but I haven't talked about their captain that Luffy fights. His name is Count Battler, and he has one of the strangest introduction scenes for a character that I've ever seen. So, his whole thing in this movie is that he wants to get the treasure on Crown Island because it's supposed to give the person who has it the power of every animal on Earth. Think of Cars from JoJo's Part 2, but way lamer. He gets introduced with his 2 cronies putting ketchup, mayo, and mustard on animal horns so he can eat them. Now, when I heard that this movie had horns as a special power granting artifact, I thought that the person looking for them would just have to wear them for them to take effect, but apparently you have to eat them. This man Battler is also voiced by the same guy who voices Rizzo now, so that's cool. Anyway, right after we're shown this man eating horns, we're treated to a straight up exposition scene where Battler just tells the Straw Hats exactly what his plans are without them even asking for them. Totally Not Mark pointed this out in his first One Piece movie review, and even I noticed how clunky it was. Even me, a total idiot, understood just how bad this scene truly is at giving out exposition. That's my biggest problem with this movie if I'm being perfectly honest. Everything in this thing just feels rushed and like it was the first idea that they came up with in the writer's room. Like the ending scene that I was talking about earlier. Now I said that I wasn't going to talk about this scene until closer to the end of the video, but I'm just going to talk about it now. I think it's that awful. So, after Luffy and Chopper beat up Count Battler after he eats these golden horns and turns into this Ozaru ripoff, yeah, that's a thing that happens in this movie, there's a scene where the animals of Crown Island decide to make Mobambi their new king. To explain why this scene is so bad and why the conclusion of this movie made no sense, let's talk about some setup. So, as this movie progresses, we learn more and more about Mobambi and his dead family. It turns out that his dad was actually a biologist and was researching Crown Island with the villain of the movie, Mr. Battler. Mobambi's dad must have figured out the secret of the horns, however, because when he refused to share his findings with Battler, Battler killed him right in front of his child. This is why Mobambi is the only human on the island. The rest of the animals end up just turning on Chopper after the bad guys go after him because they're a bunch of pricks, but Mobambi doesn't want to give him up. This is when him and Reventi decide to steal the dead king's horns and hand them over to the bad guys in order to get Chopper back. So, they steal the dead king's horns in order to bargain for the life of a person that the rest of the community doesn't give a fuck about anymore. The bad guy then eats the dead king's horns and almost kills all of the other animals after they try to stop him from killing Luffy. So everything that Mobambi decided to do towards the end of the movie was against the wishes of the rest of the animals on the island, yet they still make him the animal king. And to top everything off, he's a human, not a stereotypical animal like every other being on the island. Why in the actual fuck is this man the animal king at the end of the movie? Then they try to make the audience like this decision by having Usopp say something about how the rest of the animals on the island recognize Mobambi's courage. What courage? This man really hasn't done anything throughout this entire movie, and they just decide to give him all of the political power at the end. This movie is just really boring if I'm being honest, and I kinda just don't want to talk about it anymore. So with that being said, I'm not going to. If you really like One Piece and want to watch all the movies like I did, I would just recommend skipping this one. It's pretty awful. Even if you're a big Chopper fan, I wouldn't recommend watching it, because while the movie is technically about him and his name is in the title, it doesn't really do do anything cool with his character. Now I know that this video was shorter than most of my videos, but I really don't want to force myself to talk about something that I find boring anymore. With that being said, I think it's time to end the video here, so hopefully you guys enjoyed something where I talked about some material that I didn't like for once. Please join me next time for whatever I post next. Please leave a like and maybe subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye. Thank you so much for watching the entire video if you made it this far, as you may have noticed that this video was a little different from my others if you've seen another video of mine in the past. This is because I actually wrote this script back in 2021, when I first wanted to make an anime and manga YouTube channel, and just never got around to doing it. I made scripts about the first 7 One Piece movies before just abandoning them for some reason, so I thought that I'd make the videos that they were meant to be now that I've got this platform. Now, even though I only wrote for the first 7 movies back then, I do plan on covering all of the One Piece movies, so I'll continue making the videos after the 7th one. They'll just be more like the videos that I make today, since I have more experience writing video scripts now. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and I'll see you guys next time.